So here we are. This is our Welcome to Our World series. My name's Crystal Barrett O'Loughlin. I'm the CEO of Raregivers, and I'm here with my colleague, Dr. Laura Riordan, joining us from Lisbon, Portugal.
Hi,
And
everyone.
hello, we are interviewing today someone very near and dear to my heart, Kristin McKay. Kristin is the executive director. She is the president of Project Alive. And Project Alive is focused specifically in the Hunter syndrome community. Kristin is a sibling, sister to Zachary, who had passed from Hunter syndrome, and mother to Charlie. And married to Matthew, two dogs, and an amazing human. So without further ado, here's Kristin. Hello, Kristin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in, hearing my story.
Yeah, well, okay, perfect segue, right, Laura?
Yes.
Please tell us your story. We really want to focus on you today.
Yes, absolutely. So, as you heard, I'm Kristin McKay, and I have been in the Hunter syndrome community for as long as I can remember. My little brother Zachary was diagnosed back in 1998 at 2 years old. He was about 4 years younger than me, and we found out Zach has Hunter syndrome. He had lots of history of just illnesses and different things, developmental delays, and finally got that diagnosis. At that time, there was no treatments available at all. And so Zach didn't receive any type of therapy until he was 10 years old, and his disease had progressed a lot. But Zach was my best friend. We were just enamored with each other. I loved him so much. I mean, he changed my entire life, my whole outlook on life. And in 2015, he passed away. He was 19, much older than we had anticipated. And of course, it was devastating. But I had also lived my whole life preparing for this day. And you're never prepared, but we did our best. And a little under 3 years later, I found out that my unborn son would also have Hunter syndrome. And that was certainly really devastating to realize I was going to go through this again. I hadn't really even healed from my brother's passing at that point. But I got into action and I thought there's got to be something new available. I went to the same doctor, same hospital that I had taken my brother to every week for infusions, and met with that doctor and came up with the game plan for my son, Charlie, who was able to get treatment at just a month old. And after many months in the hospital and lots of complications, Charlie came home. And when the dust kind of settled, I was able to get involved and started with Project Alive as a board member. And in 2022, became the executive director for Project Alive. And it's just been this really beautiful full circle moment for me to be part of the solution, be part of the progress, and especially be here at a time when the Hunter syndrome community is having so many positive changes and potential treatments on the horizon that will hopefully be very life extending and improve quality of life for our kids. So it's an honor to be able to share about that and talk about my story and also the hope that our community has right now.
Kristin, thank you so much. And I get really teary when I hear your story. It resonates so deeply with me, also being in the hunter community and having grown up with three older brothers that passed. You were an older sibling. I was a younger sibling. Sometimes when you're younger, you're being cared for, and you were doing a lot of the caring of. So I was seeing a lot of my brother in your
Mhm.
story, and I was just really reflecting on what a marinated, beautiful heart you have. Like clearly, have a heart for this community, and we're so thankful for the work that you do. So,
You.
when people talk about Hunter, could just take a quick moment to describe what causes Hunter syndrome and um, even what some of the treatment options are these days? And bring that back to how that impacts the family, because as you know, Rare Givers is all about caregivers. We're
Mhm.
about this broader community within the family support structures. So if you could talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. So, Hunter syndrome is an X linked genetic disorder, meaning that mothers carry it. So, as a mom, I have a 50-50% chance of passing that on to any of my boys, and any girls I have can be carriers. So it's very rare, ultra rare, they say. There's only kind of suspected 500 people in the United States with the disorder, and it is progressively debilitating, and it affects the entire body system for most of our children. It also impacts their neurological functions. And there's a lot of degeneration in both their physical symptoms and also their neurological symptoms. So, our kids typically will kind of progress sort of typically in the first couple of years of their life, and then you start to notice some delays, and it varies a lot, but around maybe 8 to 10 years old, depending on the kid, could be earlier, could be a little later, you certainly start to see a plateau and a decline, a really rapid decline. And most of the kids don't live in past adulthood at all. They don't get into adulthood. Many don't live until past 13 years old. So, very devastating disorder. And since 2006, we've had a treatment. It's a enzyme replacement therapy because their bodies are missing a certain enzyme that breaks down cellular waste. That cellular waste builds up throughout the body systems and causes the damage. The enzyme replacement therapy that we have can help with some of those symptoms, and help break down some of the what they call gags throughout the body. However, it doesn't cross the blood brain barrier. So that has been the challenge, is that this is not life saving because the neurological damage eventually becomes too progressed. Now we have two therapies who have applied for FDA approval, and we'll hopefully know either, some at the end of this year, maybe early next year if those got approved. One is a gene therapy, the other is a blood brain barrier penetrating enzyme replacement therapy. And there's another long word, blood brain barrier penetrating enzyme replacement therapy, that will hopefully file relatively soon as well. So we have many things that are right there at the finish line, and it's a time of hope, but also holding our breath and waiting for that. Because this disease, as I mentioned, it's really progressive and devastating, and it's a lot of anticipatory grief knowing that your child is going to die, and also the grief of knowing that they're going to lose skills, and every time that they lose a certain skill, there's a lot of grief associated with that. Most of our families are in weekly appointments going to get infusions, and that's 4 hours long at least. You see just about every single specialist that there is. So there's so much navigation. It's almost project management at that point of trying to balance all of those different appointments. And then there's, IEP meetings and all of these different accommodations that you need, that most families end up having, one, maybe only a single income, or no one in the family is working because the child's care is really a full-time job on its own. There's a lot of isolation associated with that because with Hunter syndrome, you often have behavioral challenges such as eloping, what looks like aggression. I don't believe that it is. I think that they just don't understand that they're very strong, and this might, damage something or hurt someone. And so a lot of those challenges that make it hard to go out into your community or to go to someone else's house, all of those types of things that we have to kind of navigate. Getting caregivers can be really challenging so that you can have some respite or to be able to go to work. And then I think the constant advocating for your child and fighting to get them included, and for the schools or your community or your church or anything that you're involved in to understand and fully accept your child, that can wear on you and get a little exhausting. So I think having these new treatments that could potentially change some of that outlook will drastically, obviously, increase the child's quality of life, but also the parents as well. It could really give us the ability to maybe have some sense of normalcy and not have this diagnosis that for so many years has always felt very hopeless. Having some hope brought into that is just such a beautiful thing.
Wow, that was it's just so easy for us to resonate with your experience and to include all the details, and I really appreciate that, you sharing. And I know that people out there can feel into all of those places and stages that you mentioned, on the journey map.
Mhm.
And I guess that's where we could move you towards a next question, is where do you really feel that you're currently, um, on this journey map of yours?
Yeah, and it's so hard sometimes, right? Because maybe you feel kind of in between certain stages and it might be very fluid. But I would say I probably most resonate with kind of that step three of just shifting responsibilities and kind of trying to just settle into the new life. It's not, I'm not shocked by this new diagnosis. I've known now for 6 years. I of course, I had lots of learning to do, but I also came in sort of at an advantage of already understanding this disease so well because of my brother. And, at a place where I can give back to my community, while there is those complex emotions, sadness comes in and out at times. For the most part, I'm at a point where I kind of just live my day to day life. I can very easily just look at my son and say, I love you for exactly who you are in this moment, and embrace him for who he is, and to have that kind of sense of normalcy as best as we can. What's our normal, right? And I think that you get in that kind of area, there's some freedom there, right? But certainly adjusting our lives around his needs and figuring out who's going to do what and how are we going to adjust to this. And I think that's kind of a constant exercise that you're doing.
Oh, absolutely. And you naming many of those stages and cycling through them, even in a very short period of time, is I'm
Just
very
for the
common.
purposes of our community that may not have seen the journey map, I'm just going to quickly pull it up so that any of those watching on YouTube or other channels can see what we're talking about. So just this idea that life is happening and then life gets medical. And literally we get thrust onto an island with no map, no roadmap, how to navigate the complexity of all the doctor's appointments, and really the fears and the feelings that come up, right? Is this shifting set of feelings depending on where you are in your journey on medical care is what's so maybe surprising, right? It's these highs and lows, it's the joys and the griefs, it's these like beautiful moments and then like breakdown moments, and you're just sort of in this constant cycle. And we always talk in our community about sips of self-care, and how do you get off the island even just for 30 seconds or 3 minutes or a day, to refuel so you can go back and be an amazing mom, and you can go back and be that advocate, and you can run this organization, that you're running. So Kristin, what is your sips of self-care? What do you do to get off the island and just kind of get back to, okay, I'm Kristin McKay. I'm my own human going through this experience alongside my brother and my child and my husband and my community.
Mhm. Yeah, that has been a big learning lesson for me. I mean, I feel as though where I have really learned a lot was all the things I did wrong with my brother. And I say wrong with a lot of compassion. I was a young girl, a teenager, etc. And I just didn't know. I didn't have all the coping skills. I didn't even learn the term anticipatory grief until I was in my 20s after I had lost my brother. I didn't even understand what that feeling was. So, but one of the things that I did as a teenager, especially, was that I saw the differences. I felt as though, the my friends, they're upset because mom didn't buy them these jeans when I'm feeling like I'm scared I'm going to lose my brother, or I have to go home because my brother has a surgery, and these different complex things where I just felt so different than everyone else, and I felt as though no one else understood. And so my response to that was to be angry and to push people away, always kind of pushing people away. And now, as a mom, I handle that so differently. I really try to pull people in. And my, some of my closest friends aren't even parents, let alone rare disease parents, but they're people that love me and show up for me and listen to me when I need it, or will just take me to go have fun and not think about it. And those are the things that are so important. I can have different people in my life that play different roles. I don't need everyone to intimately understand this. So for me, that's part of it, is having that space with my closest friends that I am just myself. And I don't have to always talk about medical things or the struggles and all of that. I can just kind of just be me. Um, and then also, one of the things too, I think, is sometimes feeling okay with turning things off. There are times when I'm not in the best place emotionally. And so I can't always be everything to everyone. And that's all right. And having that acceptance to say, you know what, I'm gonna take a break from social media because I just can't see everything that's going on with everyone right now. I can take that time to just focus on myself so that I can come back fully charged, because I think it's a unique experience when you're in a role leading an organization for the disease that you're a community member of, because you're not only taking care of your own family and doing this for your household, but you also have kind of the weight of everyone else on your shoulders too, that you're really feeling responsible for, and that can be a lot at times. And I think knowing how to take a beat and take that time for yourself is really, really important so that I can do that. But it's been a journey, I think, to also recognize that that's what I need. I've had to really focus on that. I think one of the things with my son in particular is he went through some abnormal circumstances in the hospital and everything that was genuinely very traumatizing, and I didn't know that I was suffering from kind of post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was getting terrible anxiety, and I had no idea. I thought it was something medical wrong with me. I was just unaware because I've always been kind of the person that you just trudge through, and it has taken me getting into that pain to realize that doing that is not healthy. I have to stop and think about, what am I feeling? Like, that actually matters too. And for a logic brain person like me, that was a hard lesson to realize, oh, my feelings do matter. And if I don't address them, they will come out in physical forms and make me ill, essentially. So it's been a journey, but I feel like I'm in a much better place of actually being able to talk about what I'm feeling and finding those little outlets to give me some sanity.
Mm.
Here's a new term because we were talking about, having the right words to describe what's happening in your heart and in your body. And you talked about anticipatory grief, right? This
Mhm,
phrase, which is so important because it says a lot. Those are two words that you don't normally put together, right?
mhm,
And another phrase that we talk often about is predictable trauma.
mm,
So these are predictable traumas. The moment there is a diagnosis or even just engagement with the healthcare system, there is a set of experiences that most human beings don't go through until they're either very sick or often, in an accident or the end of their life. And so this idea of post-traumatic stress, where there's an event and we're recovering from it, is actually more aligned with chronic traumatic stress in our families and in our
mhm,
community because these are constantly repeated um, traumatizing medical experiences and so in that context, and this is the whole reason, this is why we built Raregivers. This is why we built the Raregivers emotional journey map, the 44-page guidebook. It's why we make it free and downloadable. You can go to raregivers.global and download and just process these emotions, have the words and the recognition and the witnessing to go, oh my gosh, okay. People say you put my life on a poster. Like, what is going on? But we're
mhm,
we're backed by 287 pieces of published research on the emotional impact of this experience called rare disease or chronic disease or really just medical complexity. And I think it's just important to talk about and note that because there are other care environments, care circle environments that are very mature, military and veterans care circles, right? Cancer care circles, senior care, Alzheimer's, dementia care. We know how difficult it's going to be to sustain a quality of life experience, not just for the patient or the individual that is going through whatever medical or experiential trauma they have, but we know the impact on the immediate family. And we
mhm,
know the impact on the healthcare providers. Let's have a heart. We learned this in COVID, right? Like, let's have a heart for the healthcare providers that are also in this life experience with us, because you come in as a medical professional with the expectation that you can fix.
right.
And some of these symptoms and these life experiences are not fixable. So we
Mhm,
don't fix at Rare Givers, we witness whatever the feelings are, whatever the circumstances are. We're just there to do the Brene Brown, hold hands with whatever feelings are happening. That's the empathy um, side of our ability as human beings. So thank you for letting me just share that
yes.
because that's important too.
Mhm,
Is how do we create these sustained structures? And I won't go into all the multilingual, mobile first, and all the things, when you're dealing with communities of support that are global. You talked about 500 families in the United States. How
mhm,
many globally? Because we can learn so much across borders, across
mhm.
languages, from each other. So talk about that. Why did Project Alive, and why did you, as the leader, make a decision to join the Rare Givers Coalition and kind of move forward in this relationship?
Yeah, I think for us, we really want to look at the entire family, including not just caregivers and the child, but also siblings and grandparents and, teachers and all of the people that are part of our lives. Like you mentioned, the clinicians, we have often very close relationships with them. So we really like to do that. And with that is looking at, well, who's the expert in it, who's already working with that, and how can we connect? And I think we look at you all and say, hey, you have a great program here that can address some of those needs, and we'd like to know about it and be able to share that information with our families. But also, I think recognizing that one of the things that is so important to me, like I mentioned earlier about how I like to bring people in, is that I really believe that you can find that connection anywhere. It doesn't have to be they're going through exactly the same thing. It doesn't have to be a Hunter syndrome family that I can feel that connection with. It can be really anything. So I think it's important to give our community that window to connect with all kinds of people because their journeys might not be the exact same disease, but while the parallels could really be there, and they might be further along or have some types of tips and tricks to share with you. So I think that's so critical to connect people together so that they have access to a whole world's worth of wisdom.
I love that. A whole world's worth of wisdom, right, Laura?
I absolutely love it. And I think, I mean, even in just your lifetime, there's so much wisdom, Kristin. And one of the questions we ask, which I think is appropriate for your wisdom, is if you knew then what you know now. And this is an interesting question for you because as you were describing, your younger self with your brother and what was happening with your journey then, now as a mother, you there's this elevated skill set and yet a very different way of being with in your caregiving and relationship with your son. So yeah, any words of wisdom to you younger or a younger or a beginning, someone beginning in the journey?
Yeah, I think again, it's so interesting because a lot of times my lessons are from my brother versus my son and translating those. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But I think one of the things that I now do with my son, and I don't know that this came from wisdom or just access to really phenomenal programs. My son went to another nonprofit called Beyond Blindness, and they are just phenomenal. So they taught me so much about inclusion and adaptions. And so one of the things that I do with my son is we do everything. My son is in a wheelchair. He has visual impairments. He has, many challenges, but he goes ice skating, he goes on go-karts. He goes to Disneyland and rides all the rides. We have learned through them how to adapt things so that he can participate in anything. And whether or not he is fully understanding, which now I think he does, it doesn't matter. I remember when my son was um, almost blind at that point. The visual impairment he has, it does get better. It's through his brain rather than his eyes. So at that point, he really could not see. And I would take him to the zoo, for instance, and I knew he couldn't see things. And I would kind of question, is this silly that I'm taking him to the zoo? And I landed on, no, because I'm still exposing him to it and I'm talking to him and I'm letting him explore the world in whatever way that he can. And that's something that I wish I would have known a little more with my brother. I really kind of thought that I had to baby him and, kind of assumed that he didn't understand certain things or that he couldn't do certain things. And frankly, my son has a lot more disabilities at this age than my brother ever had. But Charlie, I'm getting their names mixed up. Charlie does all kinds of stuff because I've learned so much now. And I think that's important for families to know is that you don't have to let your whole world end. As hard as that feels at that moment, you still can go out and do these things. And you know what? I think part of that too is letting go of what you fear other people think. If your child's being excited and squealing and making happy noises and that's bothering someone else, they're the grown up. And if they don't find joy in hearing that, that's on them. I think in a situation like this, when we have children with a terminal diagnosis, it's hard because you have to find the balance. Sometimes I think we get so much guilt around trying to make every single moment special, not wanting to miss any single moment because it's finite. However, there's also some good in that too. let your child have a good life. Everyone else can deal with it, and just go out there and try new things and get creative and figure out how can we adapt this situation so that he can enjoy it to the fullest. And whether or not he's participating in this the right way doesn't matter. He, at least you're giving him the opportunity to get out into the world and also expose other people. I think making sure that other people have exposure to people with disabilities is a favor to them, frankly. So that's sort of my big takeaway.
I love.
Oh, I love it too so
Yeah,
much.
it's so,
So
oh, well, now I got to look up beyond blindness. I love hearing about inspiring work from other organizations and nonprofits, and one maybe final thought. Yeah, I read in your bio, Kristen, that you like to watch medical shows. So, like, talk to us about that because that sounds
Yeah.
like an outlet for you emotionally. So, talk about that. What are your shows, and
Yeah.
why do you watch them?
I know, it makes no sense, frankly. I think it sounds very contradictory. I should avoid those types of shows at all costs. However, I don't know, there's something about it that I like. I feel as though um I always kind of had this feeling that if I would have had a different life, I probably would be a doctor. And it really makes sense now. So I think just watching those and seeing some of the medical terminology and doing all of that, it kind of makes me feel like, oh, I know what that means. Oh, look at me. It kind of gives you that boost of like, wow, I kind of know something. And also, I think there's something about it too. There have been episodes of different medical dramas that have been way too similar to my circumstances that can be a little bit triggering. But for someone like me, I kind of need those moments. I have a hard time crying. I have a hard time getting to that point of letting it all out. So sometimes I do need a sad song or a sad movie or something to kind of bring it out in me so that I have that moment of going, okay, this is going to be the time when I get to cry and we're going to let it all out. So I think maybe that's part of it. I don't know. And also, I guess bringing some light to the situation because there's usually some goofy scenario or a love interest or something. So you're kind of bringing a light to it in this often sort of not light medical reality that we live. There's my therapy
I
session for
love it.
today.
No, I think that's powerful. And what are one or two of the shows that you've watched in the past that resonated with you?
Oh yeah, my new one that is it's all the rage is called The Pit, and it is very precise. It's such a great show. I love that one. And then that's the one that can be a little triggering because it is so realistic. The other one I watched to just it's my guilty pleasure. My friends mock me for is all the Chicago med, Chicago fire. But again, there's something about how cheesy it is that makes it kind of feel light. So
I love it. All right. Well, you heard it here from Kristin McKay. Entertainment can be very powerful self-care, and a really important outlet. And Laura, did you have any final thoughts or prompts? Kristen, any final thoughts or prompts? Because we are at time, ladies. We could probably talk all day, but just for the purposes of our listeners, any
oh,
final
I
thoughts,
just love how
Laura?
you use that as self-care. It's like a container for it when you said, it almost you have your permission to have your big emotion um, during the time that you're, giving yourself to watch those shows. That's kind of cool.
Fantastic. And how about you, Kristen? Any last thoughts you'd like to say?
just thank you so much, not just for having me here today, but also for all the work that you're doing. I think it's so important as a reminder that caregivers matter too. We've put so much of our heart and soul into the people that we're caring for, and to have you all coming back and saying, hey, don't forget about you, you matter, is just, it's critical work. And we're really grateful to be a part of it and really excited to get to share that more with our community and hopefully continue to spread that positivity, really.
Fantastic. Well, we're in partnership now, and I can't wait to see where we take this together. And in the meantime, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And this is a wrap on this edition of Welcome to Our World.